Look, I know there's a lot of talk about the home games lately and the struggles here on home ice. I guess my question would be is, how do you guys get better, and I'll include coaches and players in that, at managing the moments in the game where the tide has turned in favor of, I mean, because you've had some 2-goal leads on this losing game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I think that's what it comes down to, Reed, is managing those moments better. How do you do it? You talk through it. You rep it out in practice. You know, you have meetings and an understanding of what other teams are trying to do. You know, I think what you're talking about is a lot of moments that were within our control where pucks might have been on our stick and we can make better decisions with pucks, or we can be harder in certain areas. I think the bottom line is we've played well enough to get some leads, well enough to be in games, but I said this last night after the game, to win in this league, it requires 60 minutes of effort, concentration, and execution. And last night's game, certainly, we were asleep for a good 8 to 10 minutes there.
So you mentioned sometimes pucks are on the sticks, they don't get out, hard enough plays aren't being made. I feel like we've talked about that throughout the season, or there's been, you see it for a couple games and then you don't see it again. Like, are some players, because they all know what's going on, and they're not lost with that. Like, are guys in a funk, or some guys just gripping it too hard and they're trying to work through things mentally?
Well, I would say that that's the $1 million question, right? Is in order to build a level of consistency, you need to embrace doing those things on a daily basis. And to do it, it's not choosing easy, it's choosing hard. Those are hard things to do. Now, they might be simple things to do, but it's hard to do that day in, day out, and make more good plays than poor plays. And, you know, I think what gets lost in a lot of that is there's been moments in games, big moments, you know, that haven't been our finest hour, that we can learn from and get better. The thing we want to make sure is that we're paying attention to the lessons and we're not deaf to them. You know, but in the end, I would go back to we have to choose the hard decision, which is to do those things day in, day out. And I think when you do that more than not, that's when the results follow, the consistent results.
Jay, does this team miss Mike Smith's fire? Chris Russell, being a veteran, Keith would speak up, holding players accountable. Do you miss that sort of fiery? Well,
all three of the guys that you mentioned, in my experience, were great veterans. People that not only talk the talk, but walk the walk with how they carried themselves and how they played. I think we have a lot of really good people in our room. And, you know, we haven't gotten the results that we wanted. I don't know if that you can be the best fiery speech giver in the world, but in the end, it comes down to executing out on the ice. And we know that we have the people that can do that. And collectively, coaches and players all in it together, we can be better.
And does this team have to be mentally stronger and not get satisfied when they win some games?
Yeah, I would say that I don't walk into the arena after we've won a couple games and think that everyone's belly is full. I don't feel that. And I've been around a lot of teams over the years, and there are times when you do see that or feel that. I don't feel that with our group. I think our group knows where we're at. We're in a dogfight here with teams in our division. We're scratching and clawing to collect points. We feel that we could have done better in some of our recent home games. Our road games have been pretty good. But in our recent home games, you know, we felt we've left some points on the table. We can be better. And we can talk about it till we're blue in the face. We can watch video till we're blue in the face. We can rep it out in practice. In the end, it's got to show up come game time, and I believe that we have the people in the dressing room to get that done.
Thank you.
When a team comes back from a couple of big deficits, they always say that, you know, we've got it in our heads now that we can come back from anything, and that, you know, no deficit is something we can't crawl. Does the opposite hold true when you've blown a couple of leads? Does it become an emotional, a mental hurdle that now you're going to have to put a cap on?
You know, it is funny, Rob. I saw a thing on a clip, and it was like a lead-in from Sportsnet on one of the things, and it talked about comebacks, and how our team, I think, is leading the NHL in comebacks. That's a positive. The other side of that is that you found yourself down and you're forced to come back. Do I think it works or holds true the other way? I don't think there's a mental block there. I think, you know, we went in, maybe played one of our best periods in Seattle, built a 4-0 lead, and I thought we played a mature game and found a way to win 7-2. You know, that was 2 games ago. So I don't think so. I think the game against Winnipeg, we gave up 17 shots on net, and in a big moment, like Reed talked about, we found a way to not get the job done and couldn't find that second goal. I thought last night we had a good start to the game, built a 2-0 lead, and then we fell asleep. So that's a hard lesson. But as I said, I think if you take those lessons and you grow from them, I think it's positive. I don't think there's real growth without some level of discomfort. So the discomfort part, although doesn't always feel nice, it's okay, because that's how you grow. But you got to take the lessons, you got to learn from them, and then it has to show up come game time.
So this team's pretty much where it was last year at this time, maybe a couple of games worse, and, you know, they fired the coach and went on this big run. That's not going to happen this year. How do you get that jolt without having, you know, an earth-shattering change in this organization?
Well, I think, you know, it's funny, Dave and I were talking because I think our first game last year was against the New York Islanders. It was probably 11 months ago for us. And the team at that point was outside of the playoff picture by a wider margin. But at that point, we took the mindset that we just have to be as good as we could be on that day. We had to find a way to win one game, and then one game builds into 2 games. And that's how you build that level of consistency that we're looking for. In order to do that, in order to get everybody's antenna up, that comes down to the people that we have. Our players, our coaches, and making sure that we're calling attention to the things that need calling attention to, celebrating the things that are going right, and trying to build off those. So for me, I think the position we're in, as I said, it's not always fun to be in a level of discomfort, but that's where true growth comes from. Now we have to make sure that we're applying those lessons that we're learning, and we want to see results come game time.
Jay, your top 4 forwards are even McDavid, he's having a career year. Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, Draisaitl, they're all great. A lot of your kind of your next tier forwards, guys who had good seasons last year, Yamamoto, Puljujarvi, Fogo, lots of those guys aren't producing offensively at the level they want. You probably, you can address if you think their underlying numbers have been as good, but the production, which ultimately matters in outcomes of games, hasn't been there. How do you get that out, and how do you balance being patient as a coach to continue to give them that time before you say, you know what, I got to give someone else a chance? Yeah,
those are good questions. I think the big thing to realize is that we're in 2023 right now. So patience sometimes has an expiration date too. We're coming up on halfway through this season. So if I go back to what I said to Rob about finding a way to win one game, that's what we're trying to do. And we're going to make decisions that follow that line of thinking. So the time for waiting for people to get going or maneuvering to try and get this guy going or that guy going, as I said on numerous occasions, we're trying to use our eyes and reward the people that are truly going. Now that said, we know there's more there in the players that you mentioned. We want to play the game the right way. We think numbers come from playing the game the right way. I thought we played a great game in Seattle against a team that was tied with us in the standings. And everybody seemed to put up pretty decent numbers that game. Everybody commanded their share of the ice time pie. You know, when we're doing that, we've proven we're a tough team. We can beat the best teams in the National Hockey League. It's the level of consistency that we're looking for. And certainly the players that you mentioned are searching for that level of consistency.
Nugent Hopkins mentioned he feels that, errors are part of the game. There's always going to be mistakes, that happens. But what's crushing, in his words, he felt like we're allowing the mistakes to compound. And it's one, and then it's the next one, and it's the next one. And last night was a prime example of that. It's easy to say, hey, guys, just don't make the mistakes, like, duh. But it's not that easy to have it happen. So as a coach, Jay, how do you eliminate the compound problems?
Yeah, well, I think what you do when a mistake ends up in the back of your net, as it did in the second period yesterday, you talk about the next shift, about putting a little bit of import or emphasis on that next shift, and what that next shift should look like. I think there's other things that we tried to do to not let things compound. Yesterday, we called a timeout. We pulled a goaltender. Those weren't because of, you just felt like doing it. It was to try and change momentum a little bit, slow the game down, give everybody a chance to take a deep breath. I think the big thing, though, is not just the mistakes that end up in goals. It's putting an emphasis on, when you see a certain type of mistake happen that's within your control and you were sitting on the bench and everybody sees it happen, it's about how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? And I think that starts on the bench. It starts from the leadership group. I think it starts, it feeds through the rest of the team. The coaching staff, continues to communicate and say, this is what we're talking about in this situation. We have to do this or that. Let's make sure the next time we're in that position, we're trying to do this. I think that's all part of clarifying a way that you want the game to be played. Mistakes happen, you said it, but it's about how do you respond. That goes back to what I was saying to Reed about learning from some of those hard lessons. But as I said, lessons do come hard if you're deaf to them.
We know what you miss with Evander Kane on the ice. What do you miss off the ice in a dressing room with Evander Kane with his personality? He is sort of a fiery type.
Yeah, he's a fiery guy, and he's someone with good experience too. Someone who's played deep in playoffs, not just last year, but in his career. I think he has a certain type of personality, and he has a level of confidence that he's earned over time. And he has an opinion. And his opinion is informed by his experiences. So I think anytime you take a 40-goal scorer out of the lineup, you miss him on the ice, but you also miss what he brings off the ice as well.